Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to connect two huge historical events that, on the surface, seem like they're worlds apart. But what you'll see is a chain reaction that completely redrew the map of the world. So, how did the fall of the very last Muslim kingdom in Europe lead directly to the creation of the New World? Well, in this explainer, we're going to uncover that surprising link, and it all comes down to one single pivotal year. Okay, let's dive right in. You know, our story doesn't actually start in Spain. It starts with a crisis that sent these massive shockwaves all across Europe. It was basically a shutdown that created a problem so big, someone desperately had to find a solution. Okay, so it all kicks off with this single domino. The year is 1453. The mighty city of Constantinople, the last remnant of the Roman Empire, falls to the Ottoman Turks. And just like that, bam, the door is slammed shut on Europe's super lucrative land route to Asia. All the silk, all the spices, that whole flow of goods is just cut off. A new path had to be found, and it forced an entire continent to look out to the vast unknown seas. So while the rest of Europe is looking outward, in total desperation, there's this one kingdom that's looking inward. They are laser focused on finishing a war that had been raging for almost 800 years. And that war was the Reconquista. Calling it just a war doesn't do it justice. This was the longest conflict in European history. It was this centuries-long struggle that really forged the identity of the nation that would become Spain. By the 1480s, the Reconquista had pretty much pushed Muslim rule into this one last corner. But here's the thing. The Emirate of Granada wasn't just facing a threat from the outside. It was literally tearing itself apart from the inside. It was crippled by this bitter civil war between the Sultan, his ambitious brother, and even his own rebellious son, a man named Abu Abdallah. Now, Spain's monarchs, Ferdinand and Isabella, they were smart. They saw this internal division and they expertly exploited it. They used Granada's civil war to their absolute advantage. And on January 2nd, 1492, the city's gates finally opened. After centuries, the last Muslim kingdom in Western Europe was gone. There's this legend that says as the final ruler, Abu Abdallah, was being forced into exile, he looked back at his beautiful lost city one last time, and he wept. And his own mother, seeing this, delivered this famously brutal line. What a final cutting end to an 800-year-long era. And this was the pivot. The fall of Granada didn't just end a war, it created a new European superpower. All of a sudden, Spain is unified, it's flush with cash, it's full of this intense religious zeal, and, get this, it has a battle-hardened army that now has nothing left to do at home. They were ready for a new project. So, with that old trade route to the east totally blocked, and a newly ambitious Spain looking for its next big move, well, the stage was just perfectly set for a determined sailor from Genoa who had this really radical idea. For years, this guy, Christopher Columbus, had been pitching his super risky plan to all the courts of Europe, and pretty much everyone said no. But in Spain, fresh off their massive victory at Granada, he finally found his sponsors. The very same monarchs, Ferdinand and Isabella, they saw his westward gamble as the perfect next step for their brand new kingdom. So, backed by Spanish money and really fueled by this powerful trifecta of gold, God, and glory, Columbus set sail on August 3rd, 1492. He took just 3 small ships out into the vast and frankly terrifying unknown of the Atlantic Ocean. For 36 agonizing days, the crew saw absolutely nothing but open water. Morale just plummeted. They were on the brink of mutiny, totally convinced they were just going to sail off the edge of the world. And then, on October 12th, 1492, a lookout's desperate cry finally echoed across the waves. Tierra! Tierra! Land! So Columbus was convinced he'd reached the East Indies. He hadn't. He had stumbled upon a world that was entirely unknown to Europe. But the methods the Spanish were about to use to conquer it were going to be brutally familiar. A blueprint that was forged right back at home. Fast forward a few decades, you've got the Spanish conquistador Hernán Cortés. He lands in what's now Mexico, and he's face to face with a sophisticated, massive Aztec empire, a civilization of millions. And his invasion force? It was ridiculously small. We're talking just a few hundred men. He was outnumbered by this staggering margin. Thousands to one. So, how on earth does a tiny force topple a giant empire? Well, here's the key. The Spanish didn't do it alone. They brought with them a blueprint for conquest that had been perfected over centuries of war back home in Spain. Does this strategy sound a little familiar? It should. Cortez and later Pizarro against the Inca did exactly what Ferdinand and Isabella did back in Granada. They found these deep resentments among the peoples that the Aztecs and Incas had already conquered, and they turned those groups into powerful allies. It was the exact same divide and conquer strategy, just deployed on a brand new continent. The brutality of this new style of conquest was just staggering. These defiant words were spoken by the Taino chief Hatue as he was being burned alive by the Spanish. When they offered him a chance to convert to Christianity so he could go to heaven, he asked if Spanish would be there. When they told him yes, he chose hell. You see, the events of 1492 didn't just lead to the fall of a few empires. They kicked open a door that would completely and irrevocably create the modern world as we know it. Spain's success and the unbelievable wealth that came pouring in, it didn't go unnoticed, of course not. It kicked off this frantic colonial scramble. All the other European powers, Portugal, England, France, they all rushed to claim their own piece of the Americas. And that set the stage for centuries of global conflict and the age of empire. So, there you have it, the full chain reaction. A crisis in Constantinople forces Europe to look to the sea. A victory in Granada creates this unified, ambitious Spain that's ready to fund a crazy, risky voyage. And that voyage discovers a new world, which is then conquered using the exact same tactics that were perfected in the old. And it really leaves us with this fascinating question to think about. What if the civil war in Granada had gone differently? If Spain had been tied up for just a few more years, would Columbus have ever even set sail? It's a thought that really shows you just how profoundly a single year, 1492, connected the fate of two entirely separate worlds.